My name is Henry Lawson. I'm 58 years old. And 3 weeks ago, 6 blinking numbers bent the horizon of my life. It was a Thursday. Was at the kitchen table in my ranch on Sycamore Street in Fairborn, Ohio, the same table I bought secondhand 15 years ago after Linda died because the old one had dented under elbows that weren't there anymore. The light above me made a soft hum, and the refrigerator did its steady background work. The cheap TV on the counter didn't know it was a messenger. It just flicked through the draw numbers for a game I've played twice a month since I was 23 and needed dreams that cost $2. I didn't breathe for a full beat of my own pulse, as they called them. Powerball 11. My ticket trembled in my hand. The paper went out of focus, then back. I lined the numbers twice the way carpenters do because you only need to be right once. They lined $60-2 million. I didn't shout. I didn't call anybody. I didn't take a picture. I didn't fall to my knees and make promises to skies I don't believe listen to voices like mine. I just held my breath and felt a dozen selves move through me. The boy who grew up in a drafty farmhouse outside Wilmington, Ohio, who wore his sister's hand-me-downs because winter didn't care about your pride. The 28-year-old with 2 babies and a wife whose laugh could tile a roof. The maintenance supervisor at the plastics plant who learned every kind of leak you can fix at 2 a.m. The man who picked up Linda's ashes because the chemo had been a stranger with a knife and a bill. The father who wrote checks and waited for texts that didn't come. The bourbon bottle in the pantry has been there since my last birthday because my doctor shakes his head at the thought of my blood pressure. I poured one anyway. The amber warmth moved down my throat like a confession. I stared at the numbers for a rhythm of the fridge motor and the clock tick, and then one more. A boy in me wanted to run to the porch and shout and wake up the neighborhood and tell Mrs. Lynn next door that we were going to get her gutters fixed. But the man in me, the one who has been weathered by 3 decades of family disappointments and the weird, ways money turns love into a scale, knew better. Silence is a kind of safety. It's also a kind of test. I thought of Mark, my son. Years ago, he called me at 2:11 a.m., Dad. It's just $5,000 till the business takes off. He had a tone that sounded like emergency, and I wired it before sunrise. He never mentioned it again, and his business lives now as an Instagram account where he reposts hustle quotes. I thought of Emily, my daughter. She wanted me by her. Sighed when she put an offer on her first condo in Columbus, Dad. I need your eye for the inspection, till she needed help with the closing costs and promised that was temporary. 5 years later, she responds to texts with emojis and doesn't like coming to Fairborn because it smells like cut grass and regrets. I thought of Robert, my younger brother by 5 years, who has called me from more parking lots than I can count with stories that could win prizes for fiction if they weren't so expensive. Henry, you've always had it easier. Yeah. You can spot me $1,200, right? He says it like he's offering me a chance to be the person I think I am. I set the bourbon down so gently it made no noise. My hand was steady. The decision was colder than the drink and settled deeper than the pulse. No one would know. Not Mark, not Emily, not Robert. Not Aunt Willa, who likes to mix God into gossip. Not my bowling buddy, Chuck, who would be kind but would say it in a voice that circles the neighborhood. Nobody. I hunted through the kitchen drawer for the yellow pad with the curled corner I keep for lists that matter. The pen didn't write. Until I scribbled hello, hello, hello into the margin 5 times. I dated the top of the page and wrote 3 words I have been writing since the VA therapist. It taught me to build decisions like shelves, house, money, boundaries, underhouse. I wrote, do not change anything yet. No big moves. No fancy. Replace the furnace before winter quietly. Fix the porch safe deposit box first. Ticket in the bank by morning. Do not sign the back. Do not tell a soul. Call the lottery lawyer Margaret gave me last Thanksgiving in case when we laughed. Had a guy on TV with a giant check. Under money. Anonymous claim through trust, if allowed. Protect privacy. Hire CPA. Hire fiduciary who sells boring. 1 checking account for life's is. 1 brand new account for foundations and trusts. Different bank, do not spend for 2 weeks. Sit under boundaries. Remove Apple Pay from every device, except mine. Remember Emily set up hers once? Check that new number for financial stuff. Kendra Security. Call that bank manager, Rita. Ask for recommendations. The test. Ask each of them for help without telling. See who shows. Document. Don't argue with results. The bourbon looked at me like it had advice. I ignored it, went to the junk drawer, pulled out a Ziploc, slid the ticket into it, and put the bag in the freezer behind. A bag of peas, because sometimes cliches are traditions for a reason. I didn't sleep. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked unevenly because the house is old. I made coffee at dawn strong enough to forgive ignorance. When the bank opened, I drove to First County Credit Union and waited for the same manager who handled my mortgage in '98. Rita, I said, voice lower than the rest of the world. I need a safe deposit box today and a bit of confidentiality. She looked at my face the way people who earn their living holding money look at a man who has decided to be a grown-up. We can do that, Mr. Lawson, she said smoothly. Tentative action. No paper you don't ask for. She led me through the little room with the steel door and the brass key. The box felt small for the size of what it was about to hold. I put the Ziploc in, shut the drawer, signed the card the right way, and stared at my own signature like it belonged to someone I was meeting for the first time. The card on my fridge said Lottery Lawyer Dayton. Margaret had written it after our friend. Mark Benson hit $100,000 on a scratcher 2 years ago and accidentally had his ex-wife's new husband knock on his door at midnight because his cousin's cousin liked to talk. If you ever need this, she'd said, don't let your pride talk louder than your privacy. Pride and privacy are both loud. Pride loses. Doyle and Bly answered on the second ring. Angela Doyle, the woman said, when I asked for someone who would not get me set on fire. She had the kind of voice that comes from the same place as a sharp pencil and a working stapler. We set a meeting for noon at her office in Dayton, thick glass and thicker carpet. She slid a single sheet toward me and spoke as if we were reviewing a set of blueprints we had both been building toward for years. Cash option or annuity? Trust claim. CPA. Fiduciary. Security layer. Cash, I said. I don't have patience left. Anonymity allowed in Ohio through an entity, she said. We'll build Maple Bridge Trust unless you're attached to something else. Maple Bridge is fine, I said, thinking of the footbridge behind the farmhouse where I learned to skip stones and save my sister from falling in once. Bridges and maps. It's good words. We'll claim through the trust. File a P.O. box as the mailing address and embed responding counsel. No press. You won't hold a check for a photo. We advise you do not speak to anyone outside your advisor circle about anything until your security layer is complete. She wrote, complete, and underlined it. Then she drew 3. My face must have shown something, she added. Consequences are not punishment. Boundaries are not cruelty. Back home, I took the yellow pad and drew 4 lines down the page columns' names at the top. Mark, Emily, Robert, Willa, Aunt, because she likes to ask me to fix her porch and then forget to call on holidays. Under each, I wrote simple, specific asks I could make that didn't require me to lie. No elaborate stories, no promises I couldn't keep. For Mark, ask for a ride to the doctor Tuesday. The cardiologist in Dayton, they took my blood pressure last month and told me to walk more and worry less. Ask for help covering a $240 prescription. For 2 weeks until the pension check clears, it would. This was about the words, help me cover, not give me. Ask if I can sleep on his couch for a weekend in July while the AC tech fixes mine. It was actually fine. I wanted to see if his answer showed a picture of my life in his head or not. For Emily, ask if she can take me to the grocery store Thursday and help me carry because my knee has been acting up. Ask if she can spot me $200 until Friday. When the truck eats a belt, it doesn't. I replaced it in March. But trucks eat belts. It's one of their favorite meals. Ask to stay with her 2 nights while the water heater gets replaced. It needs it, but not this week. 4. Robert asked to borrow his truck to take limbs to the yard waste site. Mine can do it. I want to see if he lets me borrow anything he owns. Ask for help moving a dresser that's too heavy for me to move alone, as my back has been 80 on its best days since 2009. Ask for $50 for gas to get to a doctor's appointment. Small. Specific. Not about his guilt. For Willa, ask for prayers. She's good at those. Ask if she can bring a casserole because these old knees don't like stirring. Ask if she can give me a lift to Riley's Hardware on Saturday. I underlined 3 words at the bottom of the page. Don't argue, because if you spend 10 minutes inside someone's excuse, they start to believe it more than you will ever believe. The truth. I started with Mark. "Hey, Dad," he said, voice smooth and unfocused. The sound of a man doing something else and hoping the call would end in a minute. "What's up? Could you give me a ride to the VA clinic Tuesday morning?" I asked plainly. "I want to run a test, and the parking lot stresses me out." Pause. Tuesday. "Man, I have a meeting. Important one." A beat of silence while he tried on lies. "Maybe call an Uber." "I don't have that on my phone," I said, which is true in all the ways that matter. "It's early. I can pay you gas." "I'm swamped," he said. "The word men in my family use to mean I want you to go away." "Weak." "Thanks anyway," I said. "Take care of yourself." Put a small dash under his name in the ride box. Nothing else. I called Emily. "Hi, Dad," she said in that cheerful voice that makes me shy because I never know how long. "It will last." "What's up?" "I need help carrying groceries Thursday," I said. "Can you come by and take me to Kroger?" "Kroger?" she said, as if it were a place only documented in books. "Oh, Dad, I have yoga at 6, and then we're going to that Ethiopian place in the short north. Have you ever had injera? It's like sour pancakes. You'd hate it?" "Probably would," I said. "How about I take you to lunch Saturday then? After you're done?" Silence while she made a face I couldn't see. "Saturday is busy." "Love you," I said. "Be well." I put a dash under groceries. I wrote Indra in the margin and circled it because my brain does stuff like that when it's trying not to be proud. Then I wrote Ask Friday for $200 struck belt. Under her column, and underlined Friday because it was easier to call people after they think they've done enough social. I tried Robert. "Brother," he said, and I could smell cigarettes. Through the word. "I was just about to call you. You read my mind?" "I need to take some limbs to the yard waste site on Saturday," I said, "and the city won't take them from the curb this week. Can I borrow your truck? Or could you? Come with me and we can do it together." "Ah," he said, and then told a story about his brakes that included a cousin I've never met and the word calibers 4 times like it makes him sound mechanical. No can do. "How about helping me move a dresser on Sunday?" I asked. My back is a liar. "Sunday's Nancy's day," he said. Nancy has been his girlfriend for 8 months, and she is not limited to 1 day of the week, as far as I know. But I can swing by next week and grab that 100. "You promised me for the lawnmower." "I didn't promise," I said. "And the mower works fine." He chuckled. "You know I'm good for it." "I do," I said. I didn't add what else I knew. I put a dash under a truck and another under dresser and then leaned. My head against the wall long enough for my neck to click. The test wasn't supposed to make me feel this old, this fast. It did anyway. I changed tactics instead of calls. I decided to put myself physically in their way and ask for small things in person when their phones couldn't buffer me. People don't like to disappoint faces like they do voices Friday. I put on my hat and drove to Columbus. Emily's condo building had that smell of new stone and everyone's perfume. The elevator pretended to be a hotel. He opened the door with a flurry of surprise and Dad. And what a fun surprise. And looked over my shoulder at the hallway until she decided I was using Uber for the first time alone in my life. "Can you spot me 200 until Tuesday?" I asked, when she had run her circuit of small talk. The truck threw a belt. "I have enough for the part, not the tow." "I'll bring it Tuesday." Her mouth made a shape. 200, she asked, even though I had just said it. "I mean, Dad, why don't you put it on your card?" "I'm keeping balances low this month," I said, which is true in all months. "I can help." "I don't have cash," she said, patting a bag that probably cost more than my month of groceries. "I'll Venmo you 50 when I get back from dinner." "It's okay," I said. "I can figure it out." She looked relieved. She hugged me in a way that didn't inconvenience her hair. I left with my hat in my hand and a map of this part of my life with parts of it blank, on my way back to Fairborn. I stopped at the diner on Route 4, where Jenny works the morning shift and the evening shift on Fridays, because her oldest is in cosmetology school. Meatloaf? She asked, pen already poised. It's good to be known by what you eat. Meatloaf, I said. It's a slice of whatever that is. She glanced. Peach. Mrs. Lynn brought them in. Her cousin grows them. Bring a slice for. Later, I said, I have to invent a celebration. Congratulations, she said, unbothered by not knowing what for. She put coffee in front of me the way people put their best foot forward and walked away right when my mouth would have. Said too much because it's good at that. The yellow pad sat on the seat beside me in the booth. I wrote a line under boundaries. Be kind to people who don't owe you anything. Judge gently, people who think you do. The next day, I asked Aunt Willa for a ride to Riley's Hardware and a casserole. She prayed in the foyer for 15 minutes and brought me a dish that tasted like humility. She also told me to call my kids more as if my thumb was broken. I thanked her for the prayers and put the casserole in the fridge and wrote, Casserole, yes, under her name, because acts of kindness still count when they come with lectures. Monday, my trust claimed. Maple Bridge Trust. Low profile. 2. Signatures. No checks held for cameras. Money quietly moved into an account I had not owned the day before. I did not check it every hour the way I wanted to. I let it exist without being the loudest thing in the room Tuesday. I asked Mark for $70 in cash for my prescription, and he said he could meet me next week. Maybe. Mr. Lawson? A voice said. This is Olivia. I had to pull the name through my head like a rope. Olivia used to be married to my son, Mark's ex. It's the only good thing he's done with consistency since he was 25 is pick good women. He just doesn't keep them. Olivia had left him 3 years ago when her patience ran out and her babysitting didn't. I heard through Aunt Willa, you might need a place to stay while they fix something with your water, she said, half questioning. Half. Much. The couch folds out. It's lumpy. But I make eggs like a diner, and the cat shares. I didn't realize until my eyes felt scratchy that I'd been holding something back all week that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with the flavor of being seen. That's kind, Olivia, I said. I think they can push my heater to next week, but could I borrow your truck Saturday for an hour? I threw my back out being stubborn. It's Mark's old truck, she said. He left it here because the registration wasn't good and the brakes squeak and I can't afford to get pulled over, but it runs. I'll drive it. You sit. We'll do whatever you need. I sat at my kitchen table with the yellow pad and the fridge's hum and the clock's honest tick and wrote one word under a new column I hadn't drawn yet because I didn't know where to put her until now. Olivia, yes. I didn't know it then. But that yes was the hinge my new life would swing on. Asterisk Saturday at 9. Olivia pulled into my drive in Mark's old Ford. The driver's door needed a shoulder to open. The brakes squealed like a choir that didn't rehearse. A calico cat in the passenger seat blinked at me as if it, too, had an opinion about my plan. You sit, Olivia said, easing out with the grace of a woman who sets her own tempo. I'll drive. Point at limbs. Coffee first, I said, handing her a thermos I'd made too strong on purpose. There's sugar in the glove box, she said back like a person who knows where sweetness belongs. We loaded limbs. She took the heavy end without announcing it. At the yard waste lot, she backed the truck like a carpenter and didn't flinch at the mud. I tried to lift more than my back's feelings, and the universe tapped me once in the lower lumbar to remind me who was in charge. Sit, she said again. And I did. We did a second run, then swung by Mrs. Lynn's because her gutters had collected. Half a maple tree since last fall? Olivia held the ladder. I scooped leaves, found 2 baseballs up there, a wasp's nest that had given up, and a note Mrs. Lynn taped to the kitchen window that said thank you backward because she hadn't thought it through. Olivia laughed. Mrs. Lynn gave us peaches because that is the way of the world when it is working. Back at my place, I reached for my wallet. Gas, I said, holding out 40. And a thank you. She put her hand over mine and pushed it gently. Back. You fixed my kitchen faucet last winter and wouldn't let me pay you, she said. Call it even, and call me next time before you try to move a dresser by yourself, Henry. Stay for eggs, I said, because morning had a shape I didn't want to dismiss. She scrambled like a diner. The cat supervised. We ate standing at the counter because chairs felt like a conversation we weren't ready to have yet. After she left, made a call not to a friend, not to family. To a shop en route for that does breaks for people who pay with cash and stories. Larry's, a familiar voice answered. This is Henry Lawson, I said. A green '06 Ford with squealing brakes is going to show up this week. It belongs to a woman named Olivia. I'd like you to do pads, rotors, and whatever else won't get her stopped by the police. Add a belt if it wants to be a hero. When she tries to pay, tell her it's covered by an anonymous safety fund through Maple Bridge Trust. Is there such a fund? Larry asked, amused. There is as of now, I said. Charge the trust. Kendra can give you the process. I hung up and wrote on the yellow pad under house. Fix brakes anonymous. It's under boundaries, I wrote. No big gifts that feel like leashes. Fix safety. Feed dignity. It's that afternoon. I asked Mark if I could crash on his couch for 2 nights the following weekend while my water heater's out. An Airbnb is like $50, he texted. Back? You'll love it. They have little shampoos. I asked about your couch, I wrote. A long pause. The place is a mess, he said. Next time, dash under couch. I asked Emily the same. The condo board has a guest policy, she said. You have to fill out a form, and I'm slammed. Next month, though, dash under stay. I called Robert. $50 to get to the doctor? I asked. I'll bring it back Friday, if you're asking me for money, he said, tripping on the last word. Yes, I said. I'm tapped, he said automatically. If you can Venmo me gas, I can swing you 20 today. Dash under. Gas. People want to believe the test was cruel. It wasn't. It was a mirror, and mirrors are unkind only if you prefer fantasy. On Monday, I made my first quiet move with the trust that had nothing to do with family. Rita at the bank had a list she keeps for old men who ask for things in envelopes. Grocery cards, I said. Seniors. Anonymous. 20 at $50 each. You know who? She did. She slid them across in an unmarked envelope, and I slid it back with a note on the outside, for the folks who always take the dented can. She walked it to the director at the senior center on Patterson Road and didn't use my name. Paper can be a relay race when it wants to be. I scheduled the furnace replacement, quiet, same brand, same thermostat. No app that tells on me. I asked Kendra to set up one more practical magic. A separate P.O. box for Maple Bridge Trust, and a call answer service that says everything a little quieter than I would. We're not building a fortress, she said. We're building a porch. With a gate in the middle of this municipal decency, my body reminded me that I am not what forms call young. I bent to tie my shoe and my back voiced its opinion in capital letters. I called Chuck from bowling because egos are heavier. Then Oak, you should have called 2 days ago, he said, arriving with a dolly and the kind of grin that says we've been doing this for 30 years. We moved the dresser with levers instead of pride. He asked, you good? The way men do when they mean I'm watching. I'm good, I lied. He let the lie sit with companionship, which is often the best you can do for a friend. 2 days later, Emily called. Not a text. A call. Dad, she said. I felt bad. I should have taken you to Kroger. I'm sorry. I was embarrassed to have you see how I actually keep my place. Why? Asked, genuinely baffled. Did you buy a horse? I have laundry in the living room, she said, and we both laughed. Want to do dinner Sunday? I'll cook, actually. Bring rolls, I said. And a story. Mark texted at midnight that same night. Dad, can we talk? Tomorrow? I have a can't-miss investment. Remind me of your bank again? Oh, I wrote back. The word looked cleaner than I expected. We can talk about forgiveness, not funding. He didn't reply. Robert showed up on my porch with a 6-pack of a beer my doctor hates and a smirk that told on him. Nancy says I'm supposed to tell. UE can help you with manual tasks, whatever the hell that means, he said. It means move the ladder while I fix the porch light, I said. He did. He didn't ask for money. I didn't offer. Sometimes the best transaction is silence and a bulb that works. A week into the money existing and not shouting, Angela and Ariana asked me to bring my future to the table in one sentence. Tell me who family is in your estate plan, Angela said. Not who it was. Who it is. I stared at the yellow pad, the columns with the dashes. The line that said, Olivia, yes. Family is anyone who comes when I need help, I said finally, and keeps coming even when it's not convenient. Blood is a suggestion. Choice is a verb. Angela tapped her pen against the legal pad, smile small. We can honor that, she said. We drafted my will. The first pages read like responsible weather, debts, expenses, taxes, then the mechanics of the trust that would hold most of the money until I had the good grace to be finished with it. Then we hit the part that made her raise an eyebrow in. That way lawyers do when creativity pokes the law, and the law doesn't mind. Clause 7, she read aloud. Family of choice provision. Upon my death, in addition to specific bequests to my children, I direct the trustee to make legacy distributions to those individuals who, in the 12 months preceding my death, provided me with care, transportation, lodging, or material assistance, without compensation and without prompting. As documented in my yellow log kept with the trustee has full discretion to determine amounts and recipients. If my ex-daughter-in-law, Olivia full name, continues to provide such assistance, she shall be deemed a beneficiary for the purposes of this clause, notwithstanding her status as a non-blood relative. You'll want to initial this one in 10 places, Angela said. And we need documentation. Dates, names. What they did? No vibes. I have a yellow pad, I said. We'll make copies, she said. We'll lock one here. If the eyebrows went higher at the next line, I asked her to pencil in, and add this, I said. Any person who attempts to contest this family of choice provision shall be deemed to have predeceased me, notwithstanding blood relation, and shall take nothing. That's a nuclear no contest clause, Angela said, impressed. It'll hold here given our statute as long as the bequests aren't the only distributions your children get. They aren't, I said they'll get something. The rest goes to a fund that does one small decent thing a day in this zip code. We wrote the fund's name on the page in a way that made the room feel like blueprints and the snow day where you get to use them. The Sycamore and Maple Fund. Porch repairs, brake jobs, grocery cards, utility shutoff preventions, exam fees. Number. Press a PO box. A ledger that makes old accountants feel like deacons. Angela slid the draft to me. One more, she said. Your letter? My letter. The one that goes with the money, she said. The one they'll actually read. You can forgive with it, or you can weaponize it. You don't get both. I sat at the table in that thick, carpeted room and wrote in my hand the way a man writes when he's writing to the part of himself that didn't want to grow up. Kids, if I died without making this clear. My apologies. Money is not love. It's oxygen. Use it to breathe, not to burn. If you showed up when my back hurt, if you drove me to a doctor, if you made casserole, you were family. If you didn't, you can be later.
Forgive me for not asking for more when
it would have helped you practice, Dad. Back in Fairborn, the porch looked handsome again after a section of rail I'd meant to fix since 2016 finally stopped meaning and started being. Larry's shop called. Truck's done, he said. She tried to pay. We pointed at your fund. She cried. Tell her your anonymous donor was the cat, I said. Sunday. I took rolls to Emily's. She cooked something that wanted to be paella and settled for rice and chicken. It was good because she wanted it to be. We cleaned up together like people who share a kitchen, which we don't. And she handed me a small envelope. For the belt, she said. It's not much. Inside, $100 in 20s. I looked at her and didn't make it a moment. I thanked her. I wrote Emily $100 belt on the yellow pad when I got home with a smaller dash next to it because the lines don't measure love. They count habits. Monday, Mark called. I screwed up, he said. The investment wasn't, I need no. I said softly, I love you. No. He made a sound like a laugh and a sob in the same mouth. You always were a hard man, he said. I always was softer than was good for either of us, I said. Try a job. He hung up. I wrote a dash under his name and then drew a tiny heart next to it because the part of me that changed his diapers wasn't going to win this round, but didn't deserve to be ignored. Thursday. Robert left a six-pack again. He didn't ask for. 100. I gave a bottle to Chuck because it's the thought, not the beer. I took a walk in the evening because my doctor told me to, and learned that people who win the lottery in secret walk like everyone else. Mrs. Lynn waved from her porch. The kids at the end of the block drew chalk galaxies on the sidewalk and asked if I wanted a planet. I said sure, and they gave me Pluto because they like to rescue things. It was a good night. Back home, the fridge hummed. The clock ticked. The yellow pad had a new column, Olivia-yes, under it. Truck, limbs, ladders, eggs. No questions. A. Called Angela Friday morning. Make sure she's on there, I said. Not as a carrot, as a recognition. She is, Angela said. You initialed it 5 times? Good, I said. Henry, she added, voice softer. This is going to be messy anyway. Now you can't tidy human beings with paperwork. But you can make the next part of your life simpler than the last one. Simple's good, I said. Simple's a choice, she said. Pick it again in 2 weeks when you get bored. That weekend I made spaghetti with too much garlic and left a plate on Olivia's porch with a note for the driver. She texted me a photo of the cat staring at the Tupperware like it had been promised a fork. On Sunday, while I was still drying the Tupperware lid, Emily called. Dad, want to go to Kroger? She said they have a sale on beans. We can make something? Yes, I said. Beans are good this week. We didn't talk about money. We loaded her trunk. She carried the heavy end, looked like. A habit asterisk the week I started spending money. It didn't look like spending. It looked like errands. Monday, Rita slid an unmarked envelope across her desk. 20 grocery cards at $50 apiece. For the folks who always take the dented. Ken, I'd written on the outside. She didn't smile. She also didn't put my name anywhere near it. She handed it off to the senior center director in a way that said, this is just what we do. Tuesday, Larry called from the brake shop. Pads, rotors, rear line, she's safe, he said. We threw in a belt because it wanted to be a story. Olivia tried to pay. I told her a cat covered it. Tell her the cat has a fund, I said. Wednesday. Jonah forwarded an email from the utility company's hardship coordinator. Shut-off prevention 3, $186.42. Single mom. 2 kids. Verified. Can we move? We moved? They didn't post a graphic. They didn't write a thread. Kept their lights dot. Thursday, Mason texted a photo of a condenser hooked up behind a duplex. Platinum fins catching late sun. Ms. Delaney says her plants won't die this year, he wrote. Mr. Ortiz says beans taste different when you're not sweating. Friday, I took a toolbox and a borrowed level to Mr. Hanley's place around the corner. He's a Vietnam vet with a knee that calls the weather 3 days early. His porch step had been soft since 2014. I replaced the stringer, cut to new treads, and left a note on his kitchen table. Step should hold now. No charge. S. He knocked on my door at dusk with a pie and half a salute. You could have called me, I said. He grunted. We called it even. The yellow pad lived beside the sink, a running ledger in my hand. Under sycamore and maple, I added a new line. 1 small, decent thing a day. Angela would later tell me the fund needed a mission statement in 102 words. I liked this one better. Mark's last ask came sharper. Dad, he said, voice scraped, no polish. I need rent. Today. $8.50. My partner ghosted. I'm out. No, I said. I didn't lace it with anything. I love you. No, a long beat. You don't care if I end up on the street. Care very much, I said. Come to Larry's at 7 a.m. tomorrow. He needs a porter for a week. It pays cash at day's end. If you show up every day for 7 days, I'll match your earnings once for a deposit paid to the landlord, not to you. And I'll call your landlord tonight and ask for grace till Monday? Silence. You're bribing me to work? He said. Bitter like coffee that's been in the pot since dawn. I'm offering you oxygen, I said. Breathing requires lungs. He hung up. I called the landlord anyway. Give him till Monday, I said. No promises after that. At 6:55 the next morning, the shop bay door yawned open. Larry leaned on the frame with a rag over his shoulder and a face that says, I see more than people think I do. Mark showed at 7:12, eyes swollen, pride working overtime. Brooms are here, Larry said, nodding at two corners. Coffee is there. Don't steal my sockets. Mark worked. Not like an apprentice, not like a convert, like a person who wanted to eat. He showed up Saturday, too. Sunday, Larry is closed. Monday, he came late and left early. Tuesday, he came on time and left tired. Friday, Larry handed him an envelope. For rent, he said. Don't buy shoes. Mark called that night. I did it, he said. Can you still? The match, yes. I said, I'll call your landlord. Same deal next week if you want it. He didn't say thank you. He did text a photo of a receipt with a zero balance. On a Tuesday afternoon, the yellow pad got a small check mark under his name. 7 days. Rent covered. Match landlord. It also got a note. No buys a job. Emily's yeses didn't arrive as confetti. They arrived as habits. She started calling me on Sunday mornings with grocery lists that ended in question marks. Beans. Pears? Roll paper towels? She drove me to Kroger with the windows down. She carried the heavy bag without looking at me to see if I was noticing. She cooked on Friday nights sometimes and let me wash while she dried, because it's best to give people a job in your kitchen if you want them to come back. She took me to the VA on a Tuesday for lab work and sat in the waiting room with a magazine. She didn't read. I brought snacks, she said, pulling a bag of almonds out of her tote like a Girl Scout who forgot to stop earning badges. She stayed with me when my back twinged during a walk and didn't make a production of it. Sit, she said the way decent people say it. She offered me $40 in cash one Thursday at the door just in case, even though I didn't need it. I wrote it on the yellow pad because documentation counts, too. Robert surprised me, not with cash. With a hammer. He showed up on Tuesday with a dolly I hadn't asked for. A new level free on Facebook, he said, proud, and a box of screws. Nancy says if I start showing up on Tuesdays, you'll stop lifting stupid things, he announced. I will not, I said. If that die, but I will let you lift them first. He cut out rotten fascia, replaced it without me supervising too closely, and didn't ask for 100. At noon, he ate a sandwich in silence next to me on the porch and said, I'm bad at money. I'm decent at this. That count? It's the only thing anyone can count, I said. I wrote Robert Tuesday's hands greater than money on the pad and underlined it once because sometimes that's praise enough for both of us. I asked Olivia to come by for lunch on a Wednesday. She brought eggs. I made tuna because I am still me. The cat climbed into a grocery bag and pretended it had been brutalized. I want to show you something, I said when we sat. I took the will draft out of the manila folder and slid it across. The table to the line Angela called the one that would make me answer a lot of questions, if anyone ever saw it. Clause 7. Family of choice provision. Olivia's full name printed cleaner than I could write it. If she continues to provide such assistance, she shall be deemed a beneficiary. She read it once, fast, then again, slow. Then she put the paper down like it could break, and looked at me in a way I hadn't been looked at in a long time, like someone who sees the person and not just the role. I don't want to be in your will, she said, eyes bright. I want to be at your table, you are, I said. This is not payment, it's insurance against erasure. People forget who did the laundry when they divide a house. She laughed and hiccuped in the same breath. The cat looked offended for reasons cats keep to themselves. Henry, she said, softer. Thank you. Keep saying yes to me before I ask, I said. That's all I'm trying to protect. We ate. I showed her the lemon magnet on the fridge that held the grocery list and the one small decent thing a day note. Over a pen, an added cat litter, in tiny, polite letters. I added cat litter to the foundation budget in my head because dignity has paused sometimes. When she left, I made a copy of Clause 7 and put it in the safe next to Barbara's letter and Ms. Delaney's laminated photo. I wrote Olivia read this and the date in my hand on a sticky note and stuck it to the top because records matter even for kindness by the end of the week. The yellow pad told a story no check could. Mark, no, then yes, work, match to landlord. No buys a Tuesday morning. Emily, Kroger VA Friday dinners, $40 just in case. Yes is habit. Robert, Tuesdays with a level. Hands greater than money. Willa, prayer and casserole. No rides because she gets lost on purpose. Olivia, truck, limbs, eggs, claws. The house hummed the way houses do when their people are showing up. The clock ticked. Porch held. That weekend, I added a fifth word under the four I'd written after my first bourbon: house, money, boundaries, dignity under it. Small, a whisper to myself because whispers stick better in kitchens: practice. Asterisk, the person I finally told wasn't Olivia. It wasn't Emily either, though I'd learned her car likes Kroger runs now. It wasn't Mark, for reasons that would insult the truth if I pretended otherwise. It wasn't Robert, who fixes more things when money isn't in the room. It was Margaret. My sister has been my spine more times than my back. She's the one who wrote lottery lawyer on a sticky note in a handwriting that could scold and encourage at the same time. She is also the only person I could picture standing in my doorway with a casserole and a folder if life decided to send me to the hospital with my name on a wristband. Asked her to meet me at Murphy's Diner at an hour where you can sit as long as you like, and coffee refills don't come with a bill. I need you to know where the papers are, I said when the waitress whose name tag says, no matter who is wearing it, slid a third pot between us, in case this gets messy or quiet. Margaret looked at me, then down at the manila envelope I slid across the table, then at me again. It's kind of messy, she asked. Because we've done all of them. The kind with good problems if you plan, I said, and bad ones if you don't. She didn't gasp when I told her the number. She closed her eyes for 1 second and then opened them with a small cuss word that sounded like praise. Then she laughed short, not greedy. You're not going to blow up your house, are you? She asked. I like your porch. I'm going to fix porches, I said, and brakes and shutoffs. I'm going to keep eating meatloaf at Murphy's. I need a tiebreaker listed with Angela. And I need someone who will bring me pie. And tell me when I'm being dumb. Done, she said. I wrote my name 3 times in my head already. She tucked the envelope into her tote. One rule for me, if I'm going to know this. What? Let me shut up when we're out, she said. Don't make me your PR. I don't want to glow. I want to hand peaches and cash envelopes to the right desks and sleep. Deal, I said. Also, my porch needs paint. She rolled her eyes. Paint day. Tuesday, she said. I'll bring Tom. Front steps. Val called it in the pantry's monthly email, a summer of fixing porches. She had made a list 15 addresses within a mile: seniors, single parents, people who waved from steps they were afraid to sit on. Jonah ran the liability language. Brianna found a contractor who believed in overbuilt and underbuilt. Mason volunteered Saturdays between HVAC calls. Robert recruited Chuck and 2 VFW guys and a young man who wanted to learn to hit nails straight. In public, I wrote a check from the Sycamore and Maple Fund big enough to buy lumber, paint, and sandwiches without a fundraiser. Jonah asked if we could put our name on the email. No names, I said. Just thanks to a neighbor. Val argued like a person who has learned to make the dignity case. Neighbor is good, she said, but donors inspire neighbors. You can put Sycamore and Maple in 10-point type at the bottom. Or we can tell the Rotary and get them to buy the next batch of rails. Anonymity is a discipline, not a rule. Sometimes it's generous to let your baked quiet inspire someone else's noise that buys screws. I let Sycamore and Maple Fund sit in 10-point type at the bottom of the flyer, not my name. The porch didn't care. The rails held. We did 3 porches in June and 5 in July. One had lilies planted at the steps. One had a wind chime that did not know how to shut up. One had a spot worn smooth where a grandson had sat last summer listening to an old man tell stories he didn't realize were lessons until after. "You're going to have to be in one photo," Val warned, holding up her phone with reluctance. Like a nurse wielding a needle. "Back of my head," I said. "Hat on deal," she said. No faces but Ms. Lynn's peaches. When the city newsletter ran a tiny square, thanks to Sycamore and Maple, Fund and Neighbors for front steps, the phone at the P.O. box rang. Kendra answered with a script that ended with "leave a message" and a handoff to Jonah for vetting. We didn't get mobs. Got 5 letters, 2 of them handwritten, one with a check for $100 and a note. "We have a porch that doesn't need work. Can pay for one that does." I told one more person. Not about the money, about the rule, Olivia. And I sat on my porch on a Tuesday evening after a day of front steps, stained my fingers a semi-permanent gray. The cat considered the railing and decided against it. The air smelled like sawdust and tomato plants. The clock inside my house ticked its own yes. "I put your name in a line that lawyers tend to think is fancy," I said. "You qualify as family if you keep saying yes before you're asked. It's ours to ruin now." She snorted. "You say the nicest things," she said. "What's the rule? Saturday mornings when you can?" I said. "Tuesdays when you want to. Bing drive. Meet at the doctor when my stubborn gets louder than the calendar. Tell me when I'm doing too much with my back. Don't let me pay you in stories. Let me pay you in breakfast." "I can do that," she said. She took my hand like a person who doesn't see favors as debts. The cat sat on my shoe to register. Its own approval. The yellow pad lived on the kitchen table, fat with grease in the corners and spines of staples from the envelopes I keep under the lemon magnet. I wrote a new line under practice: "Tell the right one, keep the others learning," the next day. Mark showed up with a fake leather binder he'd bought for a job interview and sweat that hadn't decided if it belonged to work or fear. "Dad," he said, not looking at my hat or my porch or my pad, "can you come sit with me at Larry's? I want to ask for hours. I want to ask for money." We practiced in my kitchen with a level as a prop. "Say what you bring," I said. "In. Say what you want. Don't apologize for the first part. Don't soften the second." He nodded. I sweep. I show up. I can put on a spare. I can set the jack. I want ours. I'll learn inspections. I'll stop looking at my phone. "We walk to the shop because cars get too much credit," he asked. Larry listened. Mark asked the tech, who looks like, "The way you describe reliable to your teenage kid," grunted in approval that in shop, English means yes. "You're a porter with ambitions," Larry said. "I can work with that. Don't steal my sockets." On the yellow pad, Mark asked for hours, got Porter Plus, underlined twice. No dollars listed. Emily texted a photo Saturday of a friend in an apron, who did not look thrilled to be at a pantry at 8 a.m. She came, Emily wrote. She was kind even when she was irritated. We sent her home with pears and the word tomorrow. Robert showed up the next Tuesday with the sort of sheepish smile that tells on a man's pride and his honesty. "I sold the 6-pack. He said, use the money on screws. Nancy says, I'm insufferable now." I told her I'm insufferable with a drill. "I prefer you with a drill," I said. He looked at my rail. "We did good," he said. "They're doing one over on Elm. Next." We are all doing one over on Elm next, I thought, and wrote Elm Saturday on the lemon list with beans, cat litter, and hinges. That week, I wrote 2 checks that felt like the right size for biggish. One to a local ramp nonprofit to cover materials for 3 houses on our list with ankles and chairs. One to the clinic where Nate is doing better than fine to fund a mental health counselor on Wednesday evenings, because it's rare that people get brave at noon. Both went out as Sycamore and Maple Fund. Both had no name attached. Both sent. Back a receipt and a note that said neighbors in a sentence, which is the only word that matters to me. Anonymity took practice. It felt like a muscle you keep flexing until it looks like a habit. It didn't mean hiding. It meant pointing at the right noun when people wanted a pronoun. The last line I wrote on the pad that week wasn't for me. It was for the porch. Hold. I wrote like a command and a prayer and a carpenter's hope that the angle you cut Into wood keeps the thing square long after your hands are gone. Asterisk, the health scare came on a Tuesday that had planned to be ordinary. I was on the porch at 10 a.m., cup of coffee, cooling on the rail, a list under the lemon magnet that read hinges. Cat litter, beans, elm. I bent to pick up the drop cloth Margaret had left 2 days earlier, and the world tilted 5 degrees left. My chest didn't hurt. My breath did the thing where it forgot its job. I sat down hard on the top step and told myself a story about standing up. The story and I did not agree. Olivia was at the curb before I thought to call her. Cat in a carrier in the back seat because she was headed to the vet until the universe sent her here. Stubborn, she said, crouching eye level. You talk? Yes, I said, because men say yes when the question means help. She called 911. Without asking me if I wanted 911, then she called Margaret. Bring the folder, she said, and the pie if you have one. The EMTs arrived with gentle hands and a jug of oxygen. Blood pressure too high. Pulse out of rhythm in a way the medic called not keen on cooperation. They slid me onto the gurney with the dignity they save for the awake and asked me who to call. The paper on the fridge, I said. Olivia had it in her hand before I finished the sentence med list. Allergies doctor's number. Angela's card tucked in the back because the lawyer who knows your mind should be in the same folder. As the list that keeps your body at the ER, Margaret made the intake nurse laugh, which is a sacrament. The nurse asked the family box question. Olivia answered, yes. Without looking around for permission, Emily came in an hour later with hair tied back and a granola bar she forgot to give me because she was too busy holding my hand. Robert stood in the doorway at first, then rolled the IV pole when the nurse asked, like a man who needed to do a job or he'd jump out of his skin. Mark called 3 times. Then sat in the corner with his hands in fists like he was arguing with a vending machine that used to be his life. He didn't ask for money. He asked the nurse if she needed him to fetch a blanket. They called it a fib with RVR, which sounds like a radio station. They gave me a drip that smoothed my heart like a hand on a horse's neck. The doctor said, you scared yourself. In time, which is a sentence I wrote on the yellow pad later with a line under it, by afternoon. I was in a room with a whiteboard that said Henry in goal, let heart be boring. Olivia sat in the visitor's chair and texted whoever needed. Updates. Margaret organized the nurse station with a presence that should be billable. Emily took my shoes off because I'd forgotten them. And Robert put them under the chair in a line like soldiers. Mark came after work with 2 bananas and a letter. Wrote this, he said, not making it a show. Not for money, for something. The morning resident, who could be my grandson, said, you can go home if you promise to be old about it, I promised. I meant it. On Friday, Margaret came by with the folder and the pie, and we did the formal reading in my kitchen because lawyers write, but sisters interpret. Angela had split the will into pieces worth arguing in rooms and pieces worth holding. You okay? Margaret asked when we got to Clause 7, again family of choice Olivia's name in ink, that doesn't need my approval to be true. I'm okay, I said. I just control as a habit. Letting go as a practice. Not controlling, she said, tapping the clause. You're directing after you've left the orchestra. There's a difference. It leaves discretion to people with sense. We hit the no contest clause, and both grinned the grin of children. Who learned to swear in barns? We reviewed the trustee list, Angela and Ariana if I can't. Margaret as tiebreaker. I will wield the gavel only to keep food on plates, not to win arguments, she said. And I reserve the right to bring pie to every meeting. Clause 9, she read aloud, which neither of us had paid enough attention to the first time through, permits the trustees to ignore any memorialization, requests from persons whose relationship with the decedent consisted primarily of requests for funds. She looked up. That's spicy. It's a no plaques for takers clause, I said. I wrote it when I was mad. Angela made it legal when she wasn't. Mark's letter sat on the table between us like an egg you don't want to drop. I opened it when the house was quiet. Friday afternoon. Light right. Heart boring. Dad, you nailed a clock to my wall, and it is the stupidest, best thing in my Apartment, I hate it. It wakes me up.
Yeah.
I went to the shop all week. Larry let me use a torque wrench, and I didn't break anything. I asked for hours. He said yes to hours, no to phones. I left my phone in a drawer. It felt like church. I don't know how to talk to you without asking for money. I'm trying. If you want to come by Sunday, I'll make eggs. They will be terrible. Mark, I laughed. It sounded like breathing. I wrote X Sunday brings salt on the lemon list on Saturday. Emily said the first hard no to someone who wasn't me, Eric called her. At 10 a.m. and asked if she would help him with a presentation to a fund for a reset. Retreat for his caregiver's translation. Pitch sycamore and maple for something that wasn't beans. Air or paper, I can't, she said. Also, I won't. My dad's fund is for basics. I fetch groceries on Sundays. I stock shelves on Saturdays. I say no to rooftop dinners. I will not take your deck to a pantry. He tried the tone he uses on waiters who won't comp dessert. You think your dad isn't making money too? You think he wants to fund beans forever? I think my dad wants me to be useful, she said, voice steady. And I think you want me to be beautiful. I have a shift. Goodbye. The weather in our family changed 1 degree. You can see weather moves better from a porch. Robert arrived. That Tuesday without text, ladder on his shoulder, hammer and belt. Nancy says if I keep doing this, I might become tolerable on his mouth. We added a handrail to Mr. Hanley's place because the VA had paperwork and a wait time and he had stairs now. Your name should be on this, Mr. Hanley grumbled when we finished, tapping the rail like a corporal. No names, I said. Then, hers, he said, pointing at the porch with a shaking finger. And I realized for the first time he meant Linda's. He had been the chaplain who said words the day we put her in the ground. He remembered our names because that's what decent men do. Fine, I said, throat forgetting its job for a second. Small, not shiny. Val knew a guy who knows a guy who can stamp a plate without making it gaudy. 2 weeks later, a brass rectangle held by 2 screws sat at the bottom of Mr. Hanley's top step. Flush, not a trip hazard. Where his foot lands and his eye doesn't always. Linda and Henry Lawson neighbors. It was the only time that let her spell me. It didn't feel like a boast. It felt like placing a hand on what you cut and telling it to remember why. Angela teased me the next board meeting. So much for no plaques, she said, smiling. I made an exception the size of a hand, I said. He's a corporal. He outranks paper. I slept that night with the window open because any doctor will tell you fresh air is free medicine, and because my heart had taken the suggestion and become boring. The house did its noises. The porch held. The yellow pad had a new line under. Practice. Exceptions for love. Sunday morning at 9. I knocked on Mark's door with a salt shaker and a loaf of bread. He made eggs. They were indeed terrible, he laughed. Then he made them again, and they were less terrible because practice is a muscle, and kitchens are a better place to build it than gyms. We ate standing at his counter because he only owns 2 plates and a pot. He touched the clock I'd mounted, and it did not fall. He didn't ask for money. He asked if I wanted to go to the flea market on 235, because sometimes they have old radios you like. Yes, I said. We'll be home by 1. I have a porch. Asterisk, the storm didn't come with thunder. It came in a 9-page PDF, petition for declaratory relief. Angela read over the speaker while I stood at the sink drying a plate. Filed by counsel for an interested party seeking to invalidate Clause 7 as ambiguous, violative of public policy, and ripe for abuse. Interested party, I said. And didn't have to ask which one. Not a surprise, she said. They're testing your family of choice clause while you're still alive, which is novel, but I've seen it. We'll answer quietly. She filed the answer the way Angela files most things. Measured, boring, decisive. It cited the statute. That lets a testator validate a will before death in Ohio. It pointed to the no contest clause that would starve any inheritance for anyone who tried. It attached my yellow log, names, dates, what people did without pay, and the receipts that make paper into memory. It closed with a sentence that read like a hand on a hot stove. Any further attempts to chill the decedents. Intent will trigger enforcement of the interim clause. Petitioner has been advised. 3 days later, she called. They withdrew, she said. No hearing. No headlines. Thank you, I said. There is a discipline to quiet, she said. You're getting good at it. We put the PDF in the folder with the other PDFs. Then we went back to Porches. The bus pass paid for itself twice. Sycamore. And Maple buys dozen packs of day passes now because Mason moved emotion, and I like a man who thinks like a tool belt. One went to Reggie, 21, with a job interview and a history the court clerk always looks at first. He wore a shirt borrowed from his cousin and shoes that wanted a half size more. He took the 5:25 a.m. to Tri-County for an interview. At 7, and came back with orientation Monday and a smile that made the bus driver say, without irony, attaboy. They hired me, he told Val in the pantry doorway. I don't. I've never. He didn't finish. She shoved a second pass at him for Tuesday because orientation is always 2 days when you want it to be 1. The second paid for. Itself happened the next day. The 7:10 bus stalled at Elm and 3rd, and everyone had to get off while the driver waited for a spare. Mr. Hanley's neighbor, Ms. Rodriguez, tripped on the curb and went down hard. Reggie caught her under the elbow so she didn't hit her head, then sat her on the top step of a porch that had been on our June list. He knocked. Ma'am, you okay? She wasn't. He dialed the clinic because the pantry had given him the number in their neighbor's list. He waited. He held her hand. He was late to orientation. He texted his new manager and told the truth. Said come at 9, bring the paperwork. He did. He kept the pass. He donated his first $5 to the pantry on Thursday because sometimes returns come in small ones and still count. Olivia's porch dinner had more chairs than I own. She taped a paper schedule to her refrigerator clipboard. Cat paw print at the bottom end assigned everyone a dish as if she had always run kitchens. Val brought beans and dignity. Mason brought bread and a manifold story. Larry from the brake shop brought ribs and a joke he told by making his hands do most of the work. Margaret and Tommy brought pie and paint under their nails. Emily brought a salad that wanted to be fancier and settled for good. Robert brought tools because he always does. Fixed the wobbly leg on Olivia's table between bites and didn't ask for money. Mark arrived late with rolls and nervousness. He said hello to everyone and didn't ask what anyone did for a living. Ms. Lynn walked over with peaches and a paper sack of tomatoes and the confidence of an 81-year-old who has seen entire families invented by porches. We ate outside. Because July asked us to. Someone lit a citronella coil. The cat owned 3 chairs by standing on them. I watched from the steps and felt a thing I hadn't felt since Linda's voice lived in this space. House earns when neighbors think it is theirs too. Family had more chairs than I thought. It always did. I'd been saving seats for ghosts. We didn't talk about money. We talked about screws and roots and bus drivers who look like saints and the best way to scrape paint without eating it. When night made what light remained matter, Olivia stood and raised a glass with iced tea in it because alcohol isn't always required for a toast. 2 pie, she said, looking at Margaret. 2 beans, she said, looking at Val. 2 air, she said, at Mason. 2 brakes, at Larry. 2 rails, at Robert. 2 rolls, at Mark. 2 pears, at Emily. 2 peaches, at Ms. Lynn. 2 porches, at all of us. She didn't point at me. She didn't have to. My name was stamped in the brass at Mr. Hanley's now, small enough not to trip anyone. Phone's in the cubby, Val said, for habit's sake, and someone pointed at the cat taking up the cubby. That counted. 2. Emily's first grant was a fight she didn't think she wanted until she started. At the small grants meeting on a Wednesday evening, the agenda had 5 items: exam fees, HVAC, and CNA, a printer for legal aids paper, and peace to bus pass bundles, and a line item that had been killing pantry budgets since 2012 diapers. We're not a diaper bank, Jonah said. Legal brain more than human. Funder guidance says food. Dignity says dry, Emily. Said voice even. Beans are food. So is the feeling that you can leave your house without math on your fingers? She had the intake sheet in her hand from a woman who couldn't keep a job because her baby had a rash and daycare was calling 3 times a day. $1,800 buys dignity for 30 families for a month. I'll take Saturday volunteer shifts for 6 weeks if it helps you say yes. You don't buy grants with ours, Jonah said. You sometimes do, Val said. She's making the right argument the right way. If we're a fund for basics, call it what it is. Basics. Mason lifted his hand. Motion. Fund diapers as basics when pantry inventory and dignity dictate, up to $2,000 a quarter. Second, Emily said, then smiled at herself because she was learning the language. And I'll be at the pantry at 8 a.m. anyway. Passed. Small yeses stack. People get to go to work. That's how budgets show up as love. The small storm stayed small. Angela filed the withdrawn stamp in a folder and wrote ignored in the margin in pencil like a teacher. Kendra put up a spam filter that caught 3 more interested party emails before they become nights we had to discuss. Ariana sent a quarterly report that made me want to nap in a treasury ladder. Marcus said sleep 3 times on a call where I thought we were going to discuss S&P ratios. I slept. There was one more good exception to the no-names rule. At the end of August, the front steps crew finished porch number 10 paint rails. A ramp Val had budgeted in to $100 misc, line items that made me absurdly proud. On the bottom step, flush, 2 screws, a brass rectangle. Linda and Henry neighbors? It didn't itch. It didn't boast. It sat where Mr. Hanley's foot lands every morning. He taps it. He smiles. He doesn't know anyone else's names, most days. He remembers neighbors. So do I. A week later, my heart did not scare me. It beat like a metronome that had finally found a song it didn't have to prove it knew. On a Tuesday afternoon, I pulled the yellow pad onto the kitchen table and tried to turn the last page into something worth taping to a door for a long time. I wrote the words the VA therapist taught me to put at the top of pages. I want to keep house, money, boundaries, dignity, practice, enough, under them, 10 lines. No adjectives. Fix what's in front of you. Pay for basics. Say no without a speech. Accept yes, without a receipt. Write it down. Saturdays gives pantry. Tuesdays gives porch. Phones in the CUBBY. One small decent thing a day. Tell the right person, not the most people. I tore the page off. The rip sounded like permission. I walked to the pantry door and lifted the lemon magnet. I slipped the page under it. I pressed the magnet flat. The hum of the refrigerator kept doing its job. The clock ticked how it ticks when you stop ordering it around. The porch held 4 chairs. The step plaque warmed in late sun. Mark stopped by after the shop and said eggs. Like a question that wanted to be a tradition. Emily texted a photo of her diaper grant 1-pager with 2 red check marks on it. And you would have loved my argument. Robert sent a picture of a railing with the caption, "No one falls." Margaret sent a photo of peaches and wrote, "Pie tomorrow." Livia sent a picture of the cat asleep on my yellow pad because cats are theology with fur. I sat at the table and read the tape on the pantry one more time. The $62 million reduced to neat numbers by Ariana and turned to quiet returns by Marcus Skept, working in the background. The foundation inbox had 3 new requests. The trust file had no new PDF storms. My body had decided to be old and alive and okay with that. I folded my hands and said nothing. Gratitude is a verb better done than spoken. I slept like a man whose porch holds, whose rails don't wobble. His kids are learning to carry bags and schedules and yeses that don't require money. Whose brother prefers a drill to a 6-pack. Whose ex-daughter-in-law makes eggs like a diner and reads her name in a clause without panic. Whose lawyer files things that keep storms small. Whose CPA keeps ladders safe. Whose security person has a sense of humor about spam. Whose plumber found the right pitch on the kitchen sink in 2011 and never told anyone it was art. The house slept, too. The clock ticked. The fridge hummed. The porch kept time. The magnet held.